Hey guys, thanks for stopping by. Welcome to my channel. As you can see, if you've been here before, I have changed my background. I used to have my office in my basement and now it's in a room. So I plan to continue to do videos here. I've still been watching documentaries, and last one I saw was on Netflix was Jerry Springer. And I'm not sure if you saw that one. It's a 2-video series, 35 minutes. It's not very long at all. It's basically like the producers talking about the show more or less, because Jerry Springer is like a very, very private person. So, I mean, he's dishing out the information on the guests, not himself. So the documentary is not really about him, but about the people who made the show and what they had to go through to make it, and some of the things that were going on behind the scenes. So let's get into it. Jerry Springer is the former mayor of Cincinnati. So he's a politician. He started doing talk shows around that time. I mean, there were so many talk shows. If anybody remembers, like there was Ricky Lake, Jenny Jones, Montel Williams. Of course, we know there was Oprah. There was so many talk shows at that time. So here's Jerry Springer. He starts off, and his show was pretty boring. Talking about boring in so much that they had to put it on at nighttime, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. So because this show was basically about to get canceled, Richard Dominic, who is like a showman kind of executive producer guy, talks to Jerry and convinces him, let's make this show like fun and sexy and, you know, all these things. He had to convince him because Jerry was not headed in that direction. Jerry is a politician. And Jerry agreed, and thus we have Jerry Springer. So Richard Dominic is basically running the show. So technically Jerry is like the face of the product, I guess you would call it, because he's hosting it. He has no input on anything that's really happening behind the scenes, much less cares about the direction that it's going in. He's just being himself, hosting the show, not involved with what is aired, just thinking it's all natural. But then you have producers in the background coaching people on what to say. So it wasn't always 100% authentic. Story may have been authentic, but based on some of the emotions that were coming out with them, they would coach them on,
this is what you should do, and you know, you should be upset about that. Give me more anger. Give me more anger.
So when they got onto the stage, you know, it was a show. It was, I'm trying not to curse. I promise you this is a personal thing. I'm trying not to curse in 2025. I told my daughter. But this was a real show. So that's what they wanted, and that's what they got. We know that many of the shows that you watch on TV are produced from people behind the scenes because they want you to watch their show. But this show in particular was like highly chaotic, and they were bringing out the worst of people to put it on TV, expecting them to fight, expecting them to lose their teeth and have an eye injury, or break their nose and throw chairs. Like, and you'll notice as you watch the documentary that Richard, the executive producer, is really, really proud of this show, whereas everyone else is kind of like shameful. Like, the show got so bad, like when they invited the KKK on, and I think that was like the first fight that they had. And when Richard Dominic saw that they were fighting, he's like, yeah, game on, like, great show. And everyone's like appalled and can't believe what we're seeing, and the fact that you have like people working behind the scenes that have to break up a fight. I don't know if you ever broken up a fight before, but you are getting punched too. You are getting affected by that fight because the fight has nothing to do with you, but they're doing their jobs as best as they can. And Richard Dominic is like, yeah, go along. So that's kind of how the fight started. And he thought it was brilliant. Mostly everyone else is kind of like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? This is chaotic. But I mean, once that train gets rolling, it's hard to stop a running train. You know, it made money and it got people to view it and watch it. But ultimately, like, you're taking people's lives and taking the bottom of their life and putting it on TV. So many of the producers, they know how involved they were. They would like instigate heavily to the people that would come on the show and rev them up and get them all agitated and like,
you know, you hate your mom. Like, yeah, I hate that.
But then once they get to that point, then they put them on the show. That's it. All hell breaks. Like, emotionally manipulating the guests. I don't know if they knew exactly what they were getting themselves into, based on how they mentioned that they would get the guests there, put them in nice fancy hotels, wine and dining them with the limo, nice drinks. They said that most of the guests came from Tennessee to Ohio to Georgia. Those were where most of the guests were from. So they weren't from the city. So they never really experienced the city life. So they're getting these people who live in country life, you know, small town America, and don't venture off too much. And then they're dealing with like their small town issues and problems. So when they come to the city, you know, they're wine and dining them until like the wee hours of the morning. And then the next day they wake them up like, hey, you got to do a show. So they're tired. They have alcohol in their system. You have to look at the dynamics of how the show is put together. And then they go on the show and spill their guts. And that's what the producers wanted. Jerry's getting like millions of dollars. The producers are getting paid. I'm not sure how much they're getting paid. I'm pretty sure Richard Dominic was getting really paid because he was the mastermind behind it all. I don't even know if the guests got paid to come on there and spread their information like that. I don't think so. I think they just were looking for people and they got people, and I'm gonna look that up. I don't think the guests got paid to spill their guts about their personal lives. So then they got to a point where they caught up to Oprah based on the ratings, the numbers. Eventually, I don't know what year it was, and you know, Oprah put her 2 cents into it because she's like, I can't believe what I'm watching. But I guess that's the idea. People are still watching it. So it didn't matter whether or not you couldn't believe what you were watching. The fact was she tuned into it and watched it. Richard Dominic was saying, you know, in the beginning, the show was fun because, you know, you didn't have pressure. You just were doing what you were doing and people are enjoying it. Now you have to keep up and stay on top because of the pressure. So now everyone's stressed because they're trying to find just anything. The part that they show where one of the producers had to stop when a dad was sleeping with his daughter, and they were surprised that the dad was actually going to come on the show. But yeah, the dad was going to come on the show and say he was sleeping with his daughter. So one of the producers, when it got to that point of this show, that's when one of the producers was like, okay, I'm done. So then there was a part when Jerry actually slept with a couple of his guests and had like a threesome. I guess the show was so chaotic that the fact that he did that, I think that's the reason why it was overlooked. Not that we were supposed to do anything, but we weren't surprised. So when it did happen, I guess it was like, it's the Jerry Springer show. What do you expect? I think people actually loved him more for it. What is interesting is when they had the one episode of the guy who talks about his mom who went on the show. To this day, he hasn't moved on. He's like, I haven't excelled in my career. I haven't, you know, really done anything too much after this. So he's still heartbroken from his mom because she was murdered by her boyfriend, who they both were on the show. Her name was Nancy out there, and it happened back in about 2000. It's an unfortunate situation what happened to the mom. The show is not what killed her. The guy, her ex-husband, did. And he had previous accounts with her, which is the reason why she initially divorced him in the beginning, because he was violent. So, and then she divorced him and then got back on the show to get him back. So he had a violent history. And it's sad because the son mentioned 24 years later, and you think that he would have like a blossom career and he moved on with his life. He hasn't. Jerry Springer show was a platform. I don't know if you can hold someone accountable or responsible for what someone else does after the show ends. Just like YouTube. YouTube is a platform. And then what people do afterwards when they get off of the platform, I can't say that that is the responsibility of the platform that gave you the opportunity to express whatever you felt like you needed to express. After Nancy was murdered, then the attorneys were afraid that if something else were to happen, then they probably were going to always blame Jerry Springer. That was smart. So it was leading toward them being sued. So it was wise. And then they canceled the show in 2018 because they wouldn't let them produce shows similar to that anymore. I don't know any other show like that. I don't know any of the show that has come after that. It's Jerry Springer. He passed away. And they said he was worth $60 million. And bam, Jerry Springer dies in 2023. Go ahead and watch it. It's on Netflix right now. That is it. So I'm not good at saying goodbye. I'll catch you in another video. Thanks for watching.